The Stevenson inbound, heavy between Harlem and Kedzie, and that ramp to the inbound Dan Ryan is starting to hit the brakes. Dan Ryan inbound hits the brakes between the Stevenson and the Byrne interchange, and the Bishop Ford inbound at 159. You have debris taking out the center lane, and it's sluggish between 111th and the Dan Ryan. Tri-State northbound, that ramp to the outbound Ike is heavy as well. That's traffic. I'm Paul Bodenloss on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next in our AM 560 Weather Center. Your forecast, clouds and sunshine today. Breezy by the afternoon, a high near 80. Currently 61. Next news at 8. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com.
Mike Manokin runs the Democratic House floor for 30-plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out. I said, when you're moving out.
That music means it's time for our weekly hit with Ted Dabrowski, the president of Wirepoint Inc., wirepoints.org, for all things policy-related in Chicago and Illinois. Ted, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Good morning, Amy, and happy Election Day.
Yes.
Don't forget to vote.
Consistent with our theme music, though, we'll get to the election in a second. And I don't know that we've mentioned this before, but you know, you're not just some guy with, a useless BA who writes policy papers like me. You were a practitioner in banking and finance, so you've lived in the real world. And so the reason I set that up is to say, you know, the buzz around Chicago now is, boy, the suburbs are hot. That housing market is hot. I think, and the implication is that some sort of recovery is going on. My property taxes were lowered for the first time. I had a buddy tell me yesterday who's got a home out River Forest Way. But of course he recognizes it's for all the wrong reasons that they were lowered. But your view on the hot suburban housing market right now that everybody's talking about?
Well, I was surprised by it at first too. When the COVID started, I was thinking, "Holy cow!" Our home values here. If you look at before COVID, Illinois, Chicago, we've so underperformed the rest of the country that it's an embarrassment, really, because you're seeing people's nest eggs grow a lot in other states. This is where people have most of their money, and in Illinois, our nest eggs have been shrinking. Certainly, with inflation and the property taxes we pay, it's down, and so. We can get excited by the uptick, and a lot of it has to do with people just fleeing Chicago, right? It has nothing to do with a huge demand for Illinois, and I think a false sense of security that our values are up for many people. It's going to be like, well, I'm going to take advantage of it and get out, and I hear a lot of people doing that. But it is a short-term phenomena where I think it's just people fleeing Chicago. They've got one or two kids, and they said, well, they're not going to stay there anymore, and they still want to work here. And they come up to our neighborhoods, and it's been good for that. But
well, a lot of people.
It's not a real solution.
I mean, most of the people on my street, I've had 7 families move, and the ones that are still remaining in Illinois are moving out of the city because of selective enrollment, because of the high school situation. Like their kids are getting 7th to 8th grade, and they don't want to go through that process because it's harder to get into a selective enrollment high school than it is to get into Harvard or Yale or an Ivy League school. So that's why they're moving.
Yeah, we have to see how this all plays out for Chicago, but it's helping the suburbs. But it's Chicago's 2.7 million, or it used to be. What is it going to look like when this is all said and done, and what's the offset versus a slight increase in prices in the suburbs?
Well, that's it. So my sense of it, and you tell me if you agree or not, is that there's a little bit of a sugar high right now with all the money sloshing around, and finally the weather is getting better, and things are slowly reopening. So it's feels like a recovery, and there's some irrational exuberance. and that will cool off into something akin to sub-zero temperatures in the winter here. Maybe by the end of next year, the beginning of end of this year, beginning of next year. And what I see is a free fall. I mean, no particular bottom. I mean, into the abyss is where this is ultimately going once the funny money and the irrational exuberance wears off.
Well, yeah, because we're going to see so much money come in from the of course the first you had the CARES Act, you had all the different stimulus bills we've had. We have the one that we just finished. Now we have the infrastructure we're talking about, $2.3 trillion. Let's see if it passes in this form. But you're talking about billions of money that we're printing, right? We're printing again. This is all funny money again. It's not like it's really generated money. We're going to have to pay for it in some way later. And you're right, for Illinois, we're hitting a new equilibrium as people move out of Chicago, move to the suburbs. But my fear is what's happening with the out-migration numbers. We've seen them continue to increase every year. I don't know how COVID will play into that, but my fear is that we're going to see a massive increase in out-migration again, with all the things that have gone on, from school closings to the COVID policy to the lack of reopenings and all that, and of course, the fear of Chicago going forward.
And that out-migration, it's important to dig into the numbers as you do a bit. That out-migration, there's a huge spread. In fact, at least up until recently, it was the largest in the nation, between the household incomes moving out versus the household incomes moving in. Illinois has the largest negative spread in the country, meaning richer people are moving out and poorer people are moving in. That's nothing to say anything bad about people with lower incomes, but you're losing a lot of productive capacity. You're losing a lot of wealth generators.
Well, yeah, it's a double impact. First of all, we lose on net. Over 100,000 people on net to out-migration. So we're losing lots of people, period. And then on top of that, the net exchange between the people who come in and come out are $15,000 to $20,000. They make $15,000 to $20,000 less, and so the tax base is being destroyed, and the earning capacity is being destroyed, and the innovators are leaving. And it's if you look at every single, this is important. If you look at every single age bracket and every single income bracket, the key brackets, we are losers on all of them. We're net losers on all of them. We don't even win anything. We don't even win on any bracket. So that's what's scary about Illinois.
Well, and I wanted yesterday, Governor Pritzker signed a bill increasing pensions for firefighters, and Mayor Lightfoot said not so fast, and that we, the taxpayers, are going to have to pay for that in the form of an increase in property taxes. How do you think that this is going to end?
Oh, it's. I mean, look at everything they're doing. It's the continuation of the pendulum into the craziness, right? We've got a city that can't function, and yet they just increased the pensions for firefighters. Not huge numbers, but they impact us. Another property tax increase on Chicagoans. They just increased the bargaining power. Pritzker just signed it into law for the Chicago Teachers Union, as if they need more power, right? They've struck so many times in recent years. They don't need more power. And again, every time what you're doing is you're diminishing the power of the little guy and increasing the power of the public sector. And that's exactly why Chicago's in such deep trouble. So it's a continuation of bad policy.
Well, and the other thing that this funny money does, that's underwriting this largesse from the largest governor in the country, is it really blunts the impact of the Janus decision from the Supreme Court a couple years ago to eliminate fair share. It just makes it more attractive to go along to get along, rather than stand up to the public sector unions. It also makes them more dominant. So that again in turn has a multiplier effect in terms of making it more attractive just to go along, get along, rather than say, I'm going to keep that money that you're using to support candidates that I don't support. Yeah,
it's so much money, and it's going to really mess up our view of Illinois and its mess, because Illinois is reaching that interesting point, right? Almost a junk. The out-migration and all that. And so people were starting to be able to see across the country that Illinois was an outlier. But with billions and billions of dollars flowing through the country, and trillions, it's going to hide Illinois' problems for a couple of years, and the funny stuff will continue to go on, and we'll be rotting. I hate to use that term, but we'll be rotting more even though the money's flowing in a big way, and then 2 or 3 or 4 years from now we're going to wake up and say, the funny money's gone, and what have we got left? And it's going to be a big hole.
With today being election day, as you mentioned, as we've been talking about most of the morning, local races and or issues that you want to highlight for any particular reason?
Well, I'm excited by hearing. We'll see what the reality is, but I'm excited by how many people have spoken up in the last few months, and Amy's seen it a lot by being out there on the school campuses. But it's exciting to see, and I think people forget. I remember 15 years ago, before I got into the local stuff, I had no idea about local politics, local policy. For me, everything was federal, and the reality is our 2/3 of our property tax bills are generated because of costs locally. For example, like school districts, 2/3 come from school districts. So knowing what's happening there matters. And we were talking about the power of the unions just now. This is where I think it really shows itself up. The unions, and anybody who's working in government, they get long-term contracts, 5-year contracts, sometimes 10-year contracts with guaranteed raises, guaranteed benefits. Nobody in the private sector gets that. Nobody. And so that's what's happening. If you're not engaged in what's happening in your school board or your park district board or whatever, that's what's happening to you, and you're paying the price for it. You may not even know it. They increase taxes automatically each year, whether the community can afford it or not. They can add billions in debt, or millions in your environment, your local environment. They can change the curriculum, politicize a classroom. It just goes on. And so it really behooves people to get engaged. And I'm excited by what I hear. All the people calling in today. It's we need much more of it, of course, and it's got to last. But that's what needs to happen.
This is a headline, of course, that's national in scope, but it has local application. The International Monetary Fund estimates the COVID-19 pandemic recession could have been 3 times as bad if not for government support. So government shut down, then government turns on the printing press, and government is the savior. And we see that happen at the local level all the time, and we just have such a difficult time on the small government, free minds, free market side. Such a difficult time, I guess, helping people connect those dots. It doesn't seem like it's that complicated, but creating problems and then misapplying the wrong remedies, to borrow from my favorite Groucho Marxism, that one Marxism I do support. We just have a difficult time explaining that to people, that ultimately, as you're sort of talking about before, the piper is going to get paid.
Yeah, it's really hard because, as one of your people on earlier was talking about, we've become like sheep. We just listen to what they say, and what they say is right, and too many of us don't challenge it. Now, I do want to say that I like how many people are speaking up, so maybe the challenge to the they is picking up, but that's been a real problem, right? It's easier for people just to accept it and take the money. I find it fascinating. I meet people who've gotten their stimulus checks, and they're so excited to spend it, not realizing that they're going to have to pay it back at some point. It would be smarter to put it in the bank and try to have enough money for later when you got to pay those taxes. But that's a part of the problem. We have to keep pushing the fact that lockdowns actually made things worse, and we've been fighting hard to make that argument that livelihoods have been destroyed, jobs have been destroyed, and not to mention the physical problems that people have had through lockdowns.
Yeah, but there's already talk of more lockdowns pending because the numbers in Cook County are rising, even though the deaths are down, and hospitalizations are fine, and ICU capacity is more than acceptable. Now they're talking. This has become about cases again. And they're talking about restrictions at restaurants and at gyms just in the suburban Cook County. Well,
that's the challenge for us that want to, what I say, speak the truth or talk about the facts. Yes, cases are up from their lows of a few weeks ago, but they're also still down 75% from their highs a couple of months ago. So, that's the fact. Of course, we have to be vigilant to make sure nothing crazy is going on, but you're right. Deaths are way down, cases are way down, hospitalizations are way down. They might be up in the short term, but with the amount of vaccinations that have gone on, we can't let them win that argument again and shut us down again. It's going to be. We'll have to speak strongly about it.
Yeah, we've got to
when do the Democrat Socialists roll out the vaccine passport here?
We don't need passports. Is all I got to say.
Well, I know,
don't need passports.
Oh,
aren't you
surprised
Aren't you surprised you haven't heard anything on this from Jelly Belly or Welch or Harmon?
Well, I am surprised because that fits in right in the narrative. Although you will recall, they really wanted to do this through contact tracing, and thank God that failed. You're talking about an army of people running around. It's we don't need that, and I think from my life experience, so one of the worst things we could have is a vaccination protocol or vaccination IDs or whatever you want to call them, because it will be just a deeper intrusion into normal livelihood.
And those contact tracers, if you guys haven't dealt with them, I dealt with a 22-year-old who was saying and they call your children. They're calling minors, and that is wrong. So parents, stick up for your kids and let them know that is not acceptable, that a government agent cannot be calling your minor child and asking them questions.
Yeah, I think a lot will have to do with how many people get on these new boards, government boards, local boards. We have to fight back. I think what's fascinating, let me just tell this story, at New Trier, where my kids go, they created a reopening advisory board of 21 people to advise the superintendent and to make recommendations of reopening to the board. Well, out of 21 members on the staff, only 2 were parents. And this is what happens when you don't have good board members, right? That's allowed to happen. And the administrators run the show, and this is why you stay shut down. So new board members can fight back on those things, whether it's vaccination policy or reopening.
That is not the New Trier that Charlton Heston attended, Ted. I don't know if you've heard. Ted Dabrowski, President Wirepoints, Inc., wirepoints.org. Ted, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
I bust my butt 16, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I needed to do something. Wasn't sure what. Did a lot of research, and most health products pass through our digestive system with very little, if any, benefit. But I have your 2 bottles of Balance of Nature, the fruits and the veggies, and it's time that people discover this product because it is real, and I see noticeable results. I'm taking Balance of Nature, and I'm getting healthy. I'm reaching a new balance in health. So let's